The wind howled across the endless desert, carrying with it the scent of dust, metal, and forgotten souls. Under the blazing sun, 3 men lay tied to a splintered wooden fence, bruised and bloodied, their faces streaked with dried sweat, and pain buzzards circled overhead, waiting for the world to give up on them. But that's when fate intervened, in the form of an elderly woman on an old rattling scooter, wearing a wide straw hat and a poncho that flapped like wings in the hot wind. What happened next would be remembered by everyone who heard it, not because it was violent or heroic, but because it showed that even in a world full of cruelty, compassion could still rewrite destiny. If you believe in kindness, redemption, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Let's keep stories of humanity alive. Her name was Alma Grace, a 72-year-old widow who had been living alone on the edge of the Nevada desert for nearly a decade. Every morning, she rode her dusty scooter into the vast nothingness to collect scrap wood and old metal pieces she could trade in town. She wasn't looking for anyone that morning, but destiny had a different plan. When she spotted the 3 biker jackets, torn, blood-stained, and motionless, she thought they were corpses. Her first instinct was fear. The Hell Skulls patch on their vest told her they were part of a gang she'd heard about on the radio, men who caused chaos wherever they went. She almost turned back, but something made her stop. Maybe the faint sound of one of them groaning, maybe the simple human truth that, no, one deserves to die alone. She approached cautiously, her heart trembling as she removed the gag from the nearest man. His lips were cracked, his face swollen, eyes barely open. He whispered one word, "Help." That was all it took. Alma dropped to her knees, untied the ropes, and began pouring the last of her water over their wounds, her hands shaking but determined. These men were twice her size and half her age, yet in that moment, she became the strongest person. In the desert, the bikers, whose names she would later learn were Vince, Troy, and Cal, had been ambushed by a rival gang after a deal went wrong, beaten, robbed, and left to die. They'd been stranded for almost a full day with no shade and no chance of rescue. Alma, though frail and alone, dragged them one by one into the little shade her scooter provided. She took out an old metal canteen, a small first aid kit, and the worn-out blanket she always carried. Every move was slow but full of purpose. She spoke softly as she worked, not knowing if they could even hear her. "Don't you dare give up now," she whispered. "Not while I'm still breathing." The desert sun began to dip low by the time she finished cleaning their wounds. She knew night would fall soon, and with it, cold that could kill just as easily as the heat. Alma had no phone, no car, and no one within miles. So she did the unthinkable. She built a fire out of scrap wood, tore part of her poncho to bind their injuries, and sat through the night to keep them warm. When one of the men began to shiver uncontrollably, she held his hand like a mother would a frightened child. "You'll see the sunrise again," she murmured. By morning, the men could sit up. They were stunned, not just by the pain, but by the sight of the woman who had saved them. Alma didn't ask questions. She didn't demand to know who they were or what they had done. She only told them that everyone deserves one chance to do better, and that this, perhaps, was theirs. She fed them the small portion of canned beans she had carried and shared, her last biscuit. Then she started her scooter and told them she'd be back with help. It took her nearly 3 hours to reach a small truck stop, where she begged 2 drivers to return with her to rescue the men. When they finally reached the site, the bikers were weak but alive. Days later, when Vince, the oldest of the 3, woke up in a local clinic, the nurse told him about the old woman who had refused to leave his bedside until the doctor said he'd live. He couldn't believe it. Men like him weren't used to mercy. He had spent his life on the wrong side of every law, believing the world was as cruel as he was. But this frail stranger had rewritten that belief with one act of fearless compassion. Over the following weeks, the story spread. People in town began talking about the Desert Angel, an old woman who had saved 3 bikers from death. Some said she was foolish. Others called her a saint. But for Alma, it wasn't about glory. It was about doing what was right. When the bikers recovered, they came back to her small cabin, this time not as outlaws, but as men reborn. They rebuilt her broken fence, fixed her old scooter, and painted her porch. Alma tried to protest, but they just smiled. "You gave us our lives back." Troy told her, "The least we can do is give you a home that feels alive again." Weeks turned into months, and those 3 men, once feared across the state, started visiting the local church. They stopped carrying weapons. They began volunteering to fix homes for the elderly in the nearby town, calling themselves the Road Saints, and every Sunday they brought Alma flowers. She never asked about their past, and they never forgot what. She had given them a second chance years later, after Alma passed away peacefully in her sleep. The entire biker community, even those who had never met her, rode hundreds of miles to attend her funeral. There were no fancy speeches, just the quiet sound of engines rumbling like a heartbeat across the desert. At her grave, Vince placed her old straw hat beside the flowers and whispered, "You saved us from hell, now it's our turn to keep your light alive today." Near the spot where she found them, there stands a small wooden cross with a metal plaque that reads, "Here, kindness conquered darkness. Travelers who pass by often leave water bottles and flowers beneath it, and sometimes, if you stand there long enough, the wind carries the faint echo of a scooter's hum, as if Alma Gray still rides across the desert, searching for lost souls who need saving." If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Let's keep reminding the world that kindness is stronger than cruelty. Comment below, would you have stopped to help, like Alma did, even if the world told you not to? Because sometimes it only takes one brave soul to remind us that even in the harshest deserts, humanity can still bloom.